That's what I heard.
Did you email her? What I need, oh, we got 3. Okay. What is it, Darren? 27.
Oh, I see.
Huh? Oh. Reg Madam Chair, I'm ready when you're ready. Well, it's your call. You have a quorum, so it's your call. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is 4:05, and we apologize for the lateness of the hour. And we will begin the Richland County Detention Center Ad Hoc Committee. And Madam Chair, if you will, call the roll.
Pugh,
Here.
Little, Weaver,
Here.
Aline,
Here.
English.
Present. And please let the record reflect that Councilwoman Little will be here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, item number 2, approval of minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Been approved and seconded. Madam Clerk.
Pugh,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Aline,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
And at this time, I would like to recognize our colleague, Ms. Allison Terratio. Thank you. And next item is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions?
None at this time.
Thank you. May I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk?
Pugh,
Yes.
Little, Weaver,
Yes.
Aline,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
At this time, we can move to item number 4 for discussion and action. A is located on page 8 through 17. And these are the current updates, which are noted. And one of the big things that we've been looking at is the current population report. We currently have a total of, I think it's 908 detainees in the facility. And one of the things that Administrator Brown wanted to highlight is the number of days detainees are at Alvin S. Glenn. And you can see by categories that it's supposed to be a facility for 30 days intervals. But as we can tell, there are some that have been there for longer than a year. And that's about 25%. And so there are a lot of different things that are going on with that. Do I have any questions from my colleagues?
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not sure who to direct this to, but would it be possible for staff to add, like going forward, the 366 folks that have been there longer than 180 days? Can we add something to know whether that's up, down? I mean, I don't, or maybe it's on here, maybe I'm missing it, but I don't know if that's an increase, a decrease, or could we, I don't need to know right now. I'm saying going forward, could the next report we get, could that be added?
I don't see why not. And it's 221 that have been there for a total of 366 days or better. If you're looking on page 12.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong page, okay. That would be entirely plausible, may I add.
That's something we can definitely ask staff to do, to let us know whether this number is up or down in all of these areas. I think that's an excellent request.
Oh, I see it now. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions? I'm sorry. Ms. Eileen? Councilwoman Eileen?
Madam Chair, if you could just direct me, it's probably here and I'm overlooking it, but I think I see it, the capacity for male beds is 896. The detainees, is it broken down into gender? I don't see that.
It's on the same page. Here's your capacity.
Thank you.
And to answer that question on page number 13, one side is the capacity for male and female, and then on the other side is the actual number of male and female. One of the things that we are currently looking into, and that's on page 14, and our leader has joined us. And that's, didn't know if you wanted to speak on that.
So I see that you all have covered some of the first pages related to the presentation. Wanted to know, Madam Chair, did you all discuss the kind of the breakdown based off the number of individuals that are in our custody, how long they've been waiting? Okay.
One of the requests, I'm sorry, is to add whether this number has increased or decreased over the years. Like, have we, of the 221 that have been there for 366 days or more, has that number increased from the last time, or is that a decrease?
Okay, we can certainly take a look at that because the population report certainly changes just based off of the influx of individuals and anybody that's also getting processed out. But one of the things that we talked about before, just in terms of, really jail safety as a whole for detainees and for officers, one of the things that's important is to look at is because our facility is supposed to be a short-term facility. If you look at the minimum jail standards, they talk about a type 2 or a type 4 facility. And what you look at that, they'll tell you basically that's anything where you're talking about 3 months or less, okay, of individuals that are awaiting trial. And then when you think about individuals that are sentenced, really you should have no one in your short-term facility over a year. So you're really talking about a year or less that you would have someone in your facility. And if you take a look at from our 6-month time frame all the way up to the longest time frame, you're talking about over 50% of our population has been in the Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center for over 6 months awaiting trial. Why is that important for overall safety? Not that everybody does things poorly in terms of detainee behavior, but just imagine where you have someone who has been a detainee for a year, 2 years, and then you have a new detention officer that's been there 2 weeks. So, you have someone that's looking at your system, particularly spending time figuring out how to defeat your system, and they shouldn't really have time to do that. So that becomes the issue, and that's really why I'm bringing it up from a systemic standpoint. You can ask, what is the county doing? And the county is showing you that we're modernizing our facility to the best of our abilities. We're putting all these safety protocols in. We're putting all these renovations in. But ideally, people are supposed to be passing through and not staying. And the staying is what creates some of the issues that we see or that we have seen in the past. So I don't want to spend more time on that if you've already touched on that, but I did want to make sure I highlighted that because that is as much of a safety opportunity as is putting in or renovating a new dorm or adding a new lock or putting in new security measures. But people should not be staying in our facility more than the type of facility that it is. And as we mentioned, you're talking about a year or less for sentenced individuals. And then you're looking at people not even being sentenced, but awaiting trial. So if, in fact, the majority of these folks' sentences would be less than a year, then they've been in jail longer than that time. So, and again, I know it's not that easy to say, but from our facility standpoint, that's really how we have to look at it because that's our level of responsibility.
Councilwoman Oni.
Administrator Brown, you mentioned that there are two types of facilities, a type 2 and a type 4. Can you tell me the difference between the two and which is Alvin S. Glenn?
So Alvin S. Glenn, based on my belief, should be a type 2 facility. We are currently in our reporting designated as a type 4. The main difference, and these, you might ask, where am I getting this from? This is in your SC jail minimum standards, so that's where these definitions are. A type 4 facility is almost the same as a type 2. The addition is that a type 4 actually has state sentenced individuals that are serving out the remainder of their sentences. They've served a large portion at the state facility, but they've been allowed to come to maybe like a jail because of maybe their charges, and then they do work. So they are the individuals that work, and then SCDC actually comes and they make sure that their detainees that are there, you know, are doing, we're not detainees, they're prisoners at that time, or inmates, make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So we don't have any individuals like that, and we have not, to the best of my knowledge, since I've been here. And so I have asked for clarity on that, because, again, we want to make sure as we go through all of our processes that we know our, I hate to say it, our business, that we know our organizational structure, and that any information that is being shared about the facility is true and correct and does not give misinformation. So it is a significant difference, but I can tell you we don't have individuals that are a part of the designated facilities program housed at Alvinus Glen. So I hope to get an update on that here pretty soon.
If nothing further, wanted to know if you wanted to touch briefly on the infrastructure update. I know we went over it in pretty much in detail last time, but if there's anything new that you would like to touch on.
Absolutely. Well, I'll just take a moment, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you all earlier. We talked about the number of individuals that we have that have been there for over a year. I actually have 2 individuals that have been there since 2019. So just to give you, again, an example of, you have someone awaiting trial for that period of time. That's not what our short-term facility was designed to do or be, and that lends itself to just opportunities for people not to do the right things, and unfortunately that does happen. And I'm not trying to say that everybody in the Alvinus Glen Detention Center is violent, but if you looked at the report, and I know you covered this already a little bit, but on page, I'm showing 10 of the PDF, and you look at the number of individuals with violent charges, out to the far column, that's 467, individuals. So again, it's not a situation where an overwhelming majority of people are in our facility because they have low-level offenses. And so again, that matters when you talk about classification. And classification simply means that you put people together with like allegations. So if you think about it, it seems like it makes sense, but then when you think about it from the standpoint of, if a person was arrested for committing violence and they can only be housed with other individuals who are arrested for committing violence, then not that it's a guarantee, but it wouldn't be a stretch to say that these individuals might have a violent action with each other because they're classified the same and they have to be put in the same environment. So I think sometimes when we hear the conversation, it's made to seem as though we have low-level offenders being in a situation with high-level violent offenders, and that, that's what you're hearing. But that's really not what's happening. Individuals, again, that are classified together had to be put in the same situation. So, but to your question related to the housing units, there were some additional movements, very slight in terms of the completion percentages, but there was some slight increases just because a little bit more time has passed. And so there may be somebody watching this for the first time, Madam Chair. So if I'll try to be succinct in my comments, but I will cover the housing units. Did you already talk about DJJ and that?
We were just doing that, walked in.
Okay, so do you want me to continue to kind of flow down through that? Okay.
That's fine. I'm sorry, before we move on, Councilwoman Arlene had another question.
My question is this, and I'm not sure if this is the right term, but can you speak to what is leading to the over-detention of the detainees?
So,
I'm sure it's a multi-factor issue,
like, why do we have so many?
yes, that are being detained longer than the facility is intended to.
So, I mean, part of it, quite frankly, is, as is listed out, is you have these individuals that are awaiting trial. So we had the solicitor's office come in to try to give you an example of things that they have to deal with, and they talked about, you know, gathering evidence, the other side gathering evidence as a part of their process, and just the, I guess, elongated process of dealing with, you know, someone being charged from the time that they're charged to the time of them, I guess, investigating, to the time of it hitting, you know, a court docket, and going through that process. But I can't tell you why specifically my perspective, because I don't know this is a fact, of the judicial process taking so long, so that these folks are either, you know, given an opportunity to move forward whatever they think should happen with their rights, whether that's, you know, take it to trial or whether that's, you know, plead out. But my simple understanding is when I've heard it being discussed, they've talked about, and it's been talked about just a number of cases that are on the docket and the number of cases that are backfilled. My understanding was that there was a backfill before COVID, and then COVID made it worse. And I think at one point, and again, I don't want to misrepresent the judicial system, but I think at one point, the Chief Justice sent out an order for folks to start moving cases. So Alvarez Glen Detention Center, we don't have the ability to affect any of that. We are on the downside. So when someone is arrested and brought to us, we are required to detain them. We don't have the ability to say we're filled up, and so we can't house them here. Why is that important? Because we may have individuals in our care, in custody, who have been ordered to be receive mental health treatment. But if the Department of Mental Health facilities say we don't have bed space, we can't take them, we're unable to then take them to the Department of Mental Health. But we don't have that same capability of saying that we're full. As a matter of fact, if we have people that are in our facilities, in our dorm units that are over capacity based off of classification, when the inspection comes and reviews it, they say, hey, you know, you are over capacity. But we don't choose to be over capacity. You know, we can't turn people away. So again, it's a learning issue for a lot of folks. But for us, it's more, as we're getting more and more into this, is that we have to get help from other members of the judicial process, because the jail is really just a holding place, and we don't get to affect how long people stay, how they come to us, or what happens while they're there as it relates to their rights and their judicial process. But it ultimately affects everything that you see here and creates an opportunity for you know, things to happen when people are just there and they don't want to be there. The next item related to DJJ capital expenditure charge proviso, wanted to make sure that this body was aware that there was a proviso that was passed. On page 14, Madam Clerk. Proviso that was passed in this current legislative chapter. And as you read there, what it says is, this new Senate proviso was amended on the floor, requiring local governments using the juvenile detention services provided by the Department of Juvenile Justice to pay a capital expenditure charge of $125 per day per child, not to exceed 25 days, to the Department of Juvenile Justice to cover capital expenditures and investments in the facilities that house such juveniles. This charge is in addition to the per diem charge of $50 per juvenile detainee that offsets operating expenses. it goes on to say that if the funding is not received by the local governments, then the remainder of the funds due shall be transferred to the Department of Juvenile Justice from the local government fund on behalf of local governments. The transfer to DJJ on behalf of the local government shall be deemed to have been distributed to the local government. And why is that? What does that mean? That means that we get money that's set aside in our local government fund. What they're saying is if we don't remit this payment, then what they're going to do is they're basically going to take the money from that fund and then consider your bill paid. The challenge with that for us is, so I've been here now 6 years. I'm pretty sure that the juvenile center that the county was running was in operation at least an additional 10 years before that. So for at least 15 years, if not longer, the county has operated its own juvenile facility. And the county did not receive any sort of payment, funding from the Department of Juvenile Justice, offsetting its need to take care of that issue. And so my thought was make sure, number one, that this body was aware of it, make sure county council was aware of it, and so that you will know what's happening. So Richland County, up until 2024, the fall of 2024, was operating a juvenile facility. So now we're not operating a juvenile facility, and then this proviso comes out that has an impact on the county. So we'll be talking, trying to see what this ultimately means. Hopefully this doesn't continue going forward, but we also don't want to be of the mindset that this is one and done. I need our group to be aware and to make sure that we are aware of how this affects us. And again, my perspective is the county did this work and it did not receive any sort of funding to address this. And so, maybe there's something that could happen there to offset what the county did for years. So really that was more of an awareness piece for you. We talked a little bit about it during the budget process. And right now, the last count that I got from the team at the jail was we received a bill for 45 juvenile detainees. So the last count that we had when we turned detainees to the Department of Juvenile Justice was about 25. And so, we were thinking and trying to plan for, roughly that number, but that number on the last bill that we got was 45. So you can see, quickly that can add up. What questions do you have for that, Madam Chair?
Administrator Brown, looking at the proviso, the $50, does that also have a limit in terms of how long they can charge that? I see that the 125 is not to exceed 25 days. Does the same pertain to the $50?
No, ma'am, the $50 is
ongoing.
$50 a day and it's ongoing.
So for about 25 days, it's $175. And then beyond 25 days, then we still have to pay the $50.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Madam Chair, then I'll move on to slide 15. And this really begins to talking about the status of ongoing projects. And so I'll cover this. And again, I know you have seen this, but there may be people who are looking at this for the first time. And so we just want to make sure that this information is certainly available. So Attorney-Client Visitation Center, want to remind you, in the case that you are not familiar with the setup or don't recall it, when attorneys would have to come and visit individuals at Alvarez Glen Detention Center, if they were not doing video visitation and they wanted to do, face-to-face visit, touch visit, then they would actually have to go into the secure area of the jail, into the housing units where the detainees were being housed. And so that's certainly not an ideal situation. And so what we've done is we've taken what was used to be, they called it Tango, which was a space that was being used for training and just another open space. And we've turned that into the attorney-client visitation area. So this will allow attorneys to come out and be able to visit their clients in a touch or a non-touch environment without putting them in a situation where they have to go into a housing unit. So that's going to create a better and safer environment for those attorneys who do have to go out there and meet with their clients. So we're really excited about that from the standpoint of what it does for the security of the facility as well as the folks that are involved. That particular project is almost complete. So certainly in 2026, we expect this project to be fully finished. Right now, there's a few minor things that we're waiting on, but that is coming to fruition. So that project will be complete, and we'll have a facility up and running for attorneys to visit their clients. So, and again, we learned from COVID, so we did not do all touch areas. There'll be indirect contact, being that folks will be able to sit across from each other, but they won't necessarily be able to touch. And so if the facility got shut down because of, a COVID-related type of illness, that would not prevent, attorneys from being able to go out and visit their clients because we did set it up with that, learning from that experience. Moving forward, the next area was the facility-wide security system. And what I'll simply say about that is the jail is umpteen years old, and just modernizing the facility, there's so many steps that you can take, but the steps that you can take, we are taking them. So I can't go into all of the specific details about where things will be, but as you can see, the scope of the work is to design and install a new camera and security control system throughout the facility. And so that's what we'll be doing. That is about 20% complete. As you can see, we're waiting on the selection of contractor and then permitting, and we'll move forward with that. The next area is our fire alarm replacement system. So you can, again, that's about 95% complete, and probably in the next couple of weeks, as you can see here, that'll be fully done. But the general scope of that is to remove and replace the fire alarm system for all 5-phase housing units. Now, one of the things you might not think about this, but we get a lot of, we can't call them false reports, because once the fire alarm is triggered, the fire department goes out. But unfortunately, you have a lot of instances where detainees are triggering the fire alarms. And so we have to continue to try to find ways to both have a good fire alarm system, have a good fire suppression system, and mitigate individuals from being able to tamper with them. And it's just not easy because of the construction and how those fire suppression systems work. So it may seem like a small thing, but it's one of those things that if you talk to the Columbia Richland Fire Department, they'll tell you they come out frequently, and it's because of what the detainees have done to those fire sprinkler systems. So it's an unfortunate thing, but when we fix it, it doesn't always stay fixed just because people don't always, they don't want that. So hotel housing unit, showing 100% complete in April, turned back over to the detention center for use. The only thing I'll say here real quickly is the housing unit renovations generally are somewhere between 1 to 1.5. And these housing unit renovations, we're looking at everything. Again, floor to ceiling, you're talking about electrical, you're talking about locks, you're talking about lighting, you're talking about the painting the facilities itself, you're talking about plumbing, you're talking about a water management system within the units. And all these things help to create both a better aesthetic environment, but a safer environment for detainees. So replacing porcelain with stainless steel makes it more difficult for detainees to hurt themselves or hurt others by breaking the porcelain units that were in there. So again, those are the examples of why it's a modernization. It's also a safety feature. Additionally, if detainees clog up the units, by flushing, unfortunately, this happens, flushing clothing, flushing bedding down those toilets to create disruption so they can then get out of their particular cell for whatever reasons they want to try to do that. The water management system that we have allows us to cut off water to that particular cell so that it reduces the system-wide devastation that something like that could have. So the water management system serves both of those purposes. And again, that's included in all of these units. So as you go through these, you know, units, Madam Chair, members of the committee, what you see is just different levels of progress, but all of that is happening in all of the units. So we're not treating any one unit less than another. We're giving it a full renovation. So, and we'll do that until this complete. So, and what you have in your packet represents that information unit by unit and at some stage and some level. So I'll certainly take any questions that you may have. But again, we're committed to continuing to complete the renovation of the housing units. We're committed to continuing to put in place safe features for detainees and officers. And we are committed to having a detention center environment that allows for individuals that are detained to be detained safely. And the one thing that not the one thing, but one of the things we have shared with individuals who do raise concerns about the safety of detainees in the facility is to have those same detainees to comply with the rules of the facility and not to, create, an environment that does not exist by destroying their facility. So, and unfortunately, you would think that people would not do that, but it happens. It's not unique to Richland County. So when you see us fix something and then you see it again, it's not because we necessarily did a bad job. It's somebody broke what was fixed. And there's a difference between a malfunction and something that's broken. And we've heard a lot of conversations about broken things, but it's generally behind the scenes, and we hear malfunctioning in public discussions. But a lot of those things that they say are malfunction are broken by individuals who are unfortunately destroying the property that they've been afforded to have, whether they want to be there or not. The jail doesn't get to make and pick and choose. So that's the update on those items. I did list other updates, Madam Chair, and for the other updates, I just want to let you know that it's about time for our annual visit to the jail. So I'll be sending out a notification, just letting you know and reminding you of that, try to get on your schedule to do that. So that's something that will happen. The other thing that I'll say is there's been a big concern. You all have talked about it. We've got the Columbia Area Mental Health. We're working on that agreement with them to come into the facility. But one of the things I want to point out to this group, because you may not know, is that when individuals are court ordered to go to the Department of Mental Health for services, they may be awaiting a significant amount of time in the jail until that bed space opens up. And if those individuals, unfortunately, suffer from an issue while they're there, they're still our responsibility. When a person is brought to Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center, the condition that they're brought in, whether it's something that, they've had all their life, once they're in our custody, if anything happens to them, then it's on the jail. So doesn't mean that's something that the jail did necessarily. So if someone has a heart failure, if someone has cancer, if someone needs those types of treatments, then Richland County government, through Alvin S. Glenn, becomes responsible for providing that. And it is not viewed in the same way that you and I review it today, where if you decided you didn't want to get a certain service, and so you didn't, or you couldn't afford to get that service, so you didn't get it, we have to provide it. Affordability is not an issue that we get to speak on. So I just wanted to share that with you because all that affects the money that is spent for the jail. So again, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. We're certainly taking any additional questions regarding any items that are listed or even items that are not listed that I could assist you with.
Thank you, Brown. At this time, we're going to move to items A3 and 4B. Going into executive session for personnel updates and also legal legislative updates pursuant to South Carolina Code of Law, Section 30-4-70 A1 and A2. Did I get that right, Attorney?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Thank you. At this time, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we go into executive session.
Second.
Madam Chair, if you, oh,
Pugh,
Yes.
Little,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Lean,
Yes.
English.
yes,
Motion approved.
now in executive session.
You wanna do it here? You wanna do it here? Yeah, we're gonna.
have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk?
Hugh,
Yes.
Leto,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Aline,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
And into executive session to receive legal advice. There were no decisions made. And if there are no further questions or comments, I will move to item number 5.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Madam Clerk, it's been moved and properly seconded. Will you call for the vote?
Pugh,
Yes.
Leto,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Aline,
Yes.
English.
Yes,
Motion approved.
we are now adjourned. Thank you.